Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Gay with God podcast, a safe place for us to share our stories and support one another. How long did we know? What challenges did we face? Did we lose our faith? When did we find our way back home? Or are we still searching? The stories you hear on this podcast will melt your heart and strengthen your belief that in God, all things are possible, and you can be authentically gay with the God of your understanding. I am your host, Midge Noble, and I am very honored that you are here. Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. Happy day. Or is it? I am Midge Noble, and I am your host of this Gay with God podcast and the author of the memoir, Gay with God, Reclaiming My Faith, Honoring My Story. So here we are in 2026, and my 2026 started out stellar. I had a wonderful hike from the cabin down our driveway, and it is quite a hike, especially when you turn around and you have to come back up that thing. It really gets the heart rate up. If you have any kind of problems in your lungs, you know about it right away. And even if you don't, I mean, we've had very healthy people, and I was healthier back in the day than I probably am now. But even that first time you go back up that driveway at Corgi Haven Lane, it will make you huff. And so we always tell people there are huff breaks along the way. So we'll go so far and we turn around and we look at the view behind us, and we call it the huff break because it does stress your lungs a little bit. But it was a wonderful start. The walk was beautiful. The weather was great. Everything was just absolutely stellar. And then we realized that the refrigerator was making this really weird sound. And it makes sounds all the time. It's a Frigidaire, and I'm not trying to, bad name any kind of appliance, but it is a Frigidaire, and it has made weird popping, clicking, turning noises since we got it. And we often think something else is going wrong in the house. Oh, it's just the fridge. There you go. Well, it was a whole different sound than we've ever heard. And so upon investigation, there was a puddle behind the refrigerator, and we didn't know what was causing it. And so we turned off, my beloved is smarter, way smarter than I am as far as like fixing anything. And so she said, let's just turn off the water dispenser. And I'm like, okay, but there's nothing on that line. There's nothing wet on the line. And she goes, I know, but that's the only thing I know to do. Well, it turned out to be the absolutely best thing that she could have done, because as it turns out, some blessed soul named Jeremiah, who's a local guy that apparently works on refrigerators, and we found him, and he came, pretty much the very next day. And he said that there was a hole really up close to some kind of gearbox thing in the line, and her turning off that water was the absolute best thing. So in combination with dealing with the water and the refrigerator leaking, the roof is a metal roof. And there's high winds up in Allegheny County. And so, it can get up to 50 miles an hour, and has. And it was very, very windy this last week, and we're used to hearing the roof rumble a little bit, and that's fine until it wasn't. And so I went out. I kept trying to go out to see if something was wrong with the roof, and I can only see so much from the deck, and it was too windy for me to get up on the ladder and check something out. And so, but one time I went out there, and I could literally see a whole part of the metal roof wicking up into the air and then slamming down, and whipping up into the air and slamming down during the high gusts of wind. And I'm like, oh my God, we're going to lose the roof. And so we, called around and contacted people, and one person finally, called us back and said they could come that day. And this is right around New Year's. Okay, this was New Year's Eve that we actually started understanding that we had a whole lot of problems at the cabin this time. And he came out on New Year's Eve day, and found that the screws in the metal roof were probably 3 times smaller than they're supposed to be. And last year we had someone come up and look at the whole roof, and one of our Vents had to be resealed, and it was causing a leak in the bedroom, so that had to be resealed. So anyway, he came out and he fixed the immediate problem. He got really big screws for the metal roof specifically, and this guy in the wind went up and did that to stabilize the roof where it was had come unattached, and he will come back when it's not as frigid cold as it was all last week, and he'll come back when it's not as windy as it was last week to complete the task of redoing all the screws on the roof. Now, the heaviness I'm talking about today is not necessarily things like, roofs going wrong and having to replace things, although that does give you a heavy feeling. It feels heavy when you don't know what to do. It feels heavy when you're not sure of what person's going to come and if they're going to be a good person and a person that can actually do the job correctly. And last year, I really thought that the guys that were doing it knew what they were doing. They're roofers, and I don't know what screw goes in a metal roof. I don't know anything about it. And I wasn't up on the roof watching to see. The guy that came this last week said that they even tried to put a screw into a metal part on the roof, and so it wasn't even attached at all at that one place. So there you go. So, but heaviness also comes to us when we are emotionally and physically exhausted. If you're living in chronic pain all the time, there's a heaviness that comes to just moving. I got a call from my mom right before I came onto the podcast today. She's 91 and she's always had, some pretty bad knees as she aged. They call it bone on bone. She's in constant pain with her knees. And so that was one of the reasons. There were many reasons, but one of the reasons that she moved in with my sister was because it was becoming impossible for her to do daily things all by herself at her home. And so going to live with my sister was a way to have companionship, and it was also a way for someone else to assist her and help her and take the load off of her with all the daily chores that you have living in your own home alone. And she called me and we talked about, the pain that my wife is going through with all the neck and the back, lower back issues she's having, and how hard that is for her to try to do anything right now, and how good Mama has been taken care of at my sister's house so that she can live a life of less pain. It hurts her all the time, but she has some medications that help, but it never goes away. And so that heaviness of losing the ability to be the person you've always been, to be the person you want to be, and to do the things that you can't do anymore leaves us emotionally heavy and feeling as if maybe our worth is not being put out into the world the way we want it to be put out into the world. The other thing that brings us heaviness is when we can't get well. And, I have many friends who have varying degrees of unwellness, dis-ease in their bodies. And I am one of those people that have a dis-ease in my body when it comes to living with colitis. And this is a whole new thing for me to try to navigate as to how to be as, happy as I can be and enjoy the things that I'm eating when sometimes I know that enjoying this thing may cause a flare up, which is not great. And I can tell you that's not great. So, that heaviness of not being able to just go out to a restaurant and order anything I dang well please and be okay with it. Now, being a vegan took a lot of that away from me anyway. I can't order just anything I choose to eat. Yes, I'm allowed to do it. I choose not to do it. That's on me. But so there's sometimes that heaviness that comes with being separated from people who want to go to a certain place, and I'm either not invited or they always worry about what am I going to eat. And I keep trying to tell people, I'll take care of myself. I can always get a baked potato, or I can eat. I just want the companionship and to be with other people. I don't care if I eat the same thing you eat, and I don't care what you eat. So anyway, but that heaviness of living in your truth, but then not being able to participate in things sometimes because of what it is, or who is comfortable being with you, and you are different from where they're going to eat or what you eat. And then, my friends, we come to the first part of January that I thought was going super, super good for me. And I loved the great God winks that we got, over the week where, we had a problem. We called a person. They came out during the holiday. And, God bless the one guy that actually did come out, you know, on the roof and all that. I think he actually showed up on New Year's Day. He was going to come on a Friday, but he came on New Year's Day. And I thought that was just awesome that he did that. And I told him it wasn't necessary. He could come the next day, but he goes, "No, we really want to come today." Okay, come on. And we welcomed him. I offered him coffee. What do you need? Come on in, get warm. Um, but I I thought everything was going so great, and I said 2026 is going to be our year. You're going to get better. Everything's going to go great. We're going to continue to, da 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 da. And then we get the news that we could be at war soon. And the things that are going on politically just make me want to move. We actually talked about it this weekend. Like, where would we go? What country would we go? How would we get there? Now, we had this conversation back in 2016, and we could not financially figure out how we would go anywhere with all of the dogs that we had. And, we would not leave them behind. Quarantining them for 2 months without us was not an option. And so we dug in, from 2016 to whenever, and we dug in. But it was absolutely an option for us to get out. And again, in this past year, we revisited that. Where would we go? How would we do it? It still wasn't an option. And as we think of it now, there are many countries that I would love to live in, but I also worry about transitioning the kids. The heaviness of feeling trapped, where you just don't know where to go, how to get out of your current circumstance. When we think about being gay with God, that comes with a whole host of trappedness where you have to find a church that's going to feed you and also embrace you as you are, and not just to tolerate you, but to embrace your full divinity of the God of your understanding, that you can fully participate in serving God, in being in positions of the church that are for people who are members of the church, and that being LGBTQIA plus would not be a hindrance in you being able to serve on any position at a church, from, preacher to priest to bishop to whatever, that you would be able to go as far as God is calling you to go. Feeling trapped and heavy in an oppressive situation, especially when you may be at a church, is not appropriate, and it should never happen. And yet we all know that it does. So for those of you who have stayed at your churches and just kind of hunkered down and moved through, I give you a lot of credit because I wouldn't do it. I just couldn't do it anymore. I did for a long time, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And, finding an Episcopal church was very enlightening to me, because I didn't know a church existed at the time that I was looking, or wasn't looking, but then found it. I didn't know that it existed, that you could go to a church and no one would bat an eye at you if you wore rainbow colors or you identified as a wife to so and so, and it never was an issue. What I then learned, though, that in some, not all, but in some Episcopal churches, the people who really don't approve of what you're doing or who you are, they keep really quiet. And they just don't support you. Like, we'll do a pride mass at our church, and the only people who come are the other gay people and some of their friends, or some new people that might have heard that we were having one. But very few of the congregation show up at our pride mass. It's always the people who are already our allies or are just good friends. And so that saddens me that you have the opportunity to be in a denomination. Now, the entire denomination of Episcopalians, the Episcopal belief is that we are absolutely called by God to be who we are, and that, we've had gay bishops. That's as far up as you can go. There are gay priests. That it's it's absolutely approved and encouraged to be who you are called to be, but individual churches play by their own rules. So, you know, that's a heaviness for me because I love the people in my church. I have been welcomed there. I have been encouraged to explore growing into the church, and I'm on different committees. However, I know there's still a pocket of people who really are very far right and would not bat an eye if I left, would not bat an eye. And so it's up to me to decide, as I've been there long enough to work out who's who and what they're really about. Will this church still feed me? And am I still going to be able to grow, knowing that this church may or may not feel the need to expand their diversity? So that heaviness that we feel from time to time for minor things up to the huge things, like what we're dealing with now with our democracy, with I think treasonous behavior, completely impeachable behavior, and just defying the Constitution. This is a very, very heavy time for every person in the United States and for the rest of the country, because every other nation is intertwined with working with each other. We, as a United States of America, may not have always done it right, clearly, but we have always been allies to other countries, and we have always been, I think, more or less a light in the world. Not always. I get it. I know history. Not always. However, right now, not only are we a laughing stock, we are now being banned to going into certain countries. We have been pretty much identified as a threat and that we can't be trusted. And that is just deplorable. I think it's sad, and it's absolutely inappropriate for us to continue to condone a leader in the White House that has now blown up our relationships with other countries. What does this have to do with being gay with God? Well, if he continues with the Project 2025 book and plan that they're working off of, we may be some of the ones that are on the chopping block. We always have been. He definitely tried to get us on the chopping block earlier in his term this time, and if he continues to be the dictator and go against the Constitution and completely pushing aside the Congress, he's already an authoritarian. He has already called for people to be killed. He has already now gone into another country, invaded them, occupied that country, and taken out their leader. If he doesn't want a gay person in here, in his country, he'll find a way to get us out. And I'm not saying that to be a fearmonger. My eyes are wide open. My eyes are wide open, and I see the plan that he's working on, and I know what the ultimate game is for them. The end game is to have a white supremacy country, and everybody else that doesn't fall into that category is gone. So that's heavy for me. So what do I do with that? Well, one, I really focused on all the things that did go right this past week. I made sure that even though we were still, I even put a piece of tape over the stupid drink dispenser. We're so used to grabbing the bowls for the dogs for their supper and putting the water in at the door of the refrigerator. And we couldn't, we couldn't remember not to do it. And we'd try it. Well, the water's not there because we turned the water off. So I put a big piece of blue painter's tape across the front. Beloved still did it. Or attempted to do it. But anyway, I did it a couple times. I'll admit that. I did it a couple times. But yeah, it was a consistent problem just to try it. But that's a funny thing. That's not anything heavy or bad. It's just that's the way it was. But all of the things that came and fell into place for us to be able to leave the cabin and not worry about a water leak, to not worry about the roof blowing off before we got back. And we were able to drain all the water out of the pipes this time, where last time we tried to do it and it was frozen down below at our freestanding pump, and so we couldn't drain the water all the way out of the pipes in the ground. So we always like to clean that out when it's this cold, because and water the ice can build up and explode a pipe underground. So anyway, I focused on what was going right. I focused on all the things that made me happy, and it was something of a mixed bag. I was staying connected to the news, but I also was trying to, continue to balance that with all of the good in our life and all the joy that we feel and all of the things that had been going right. Yesterday, oh, and I've started Tai Chi. Have I told you? I started Tai Chi. I'm having a really hard time doing yoga right now because of my neck and shoulder problems. And so doing those positions have become very painful and sometimes just unable to do it. And so I did find some Tai Chi that I'm doing. I can't do all of the positions, but most of them I have been able to do. And it's made me feel lighter, and it's made me feel more in control of my body. And I've only done it for, maybe a week. And it's already shifted some things energetically for me. So I'm loving the Tai Chi. And so last night, even though I didn't get to do it earlier in the day because we left the mountain yesterday, I did it last night before I went to bed. And then, of course, I got a little energized after doing it. So then I did some sound waves for meditation and peace. And that put me in a really, really sweet space. It was so good. So I gifted that to myself before I went to sleep. I think those are the things that will sustain us when we're feeling heavy. For wherever it comes from, we need to find the thing that settles into our soul and wakens it back up a little bit. It could be, playing music. It could be something really loud and crazy that makes you feel better. I tend to like the music that's more sedate and relaxing and meditative. But whatever gives you that joy or that peace, whatever you're seeking, find those things and don't forget to do them. I've been, you know, having the eye problems from time to time this past year, and not doing my morning meditation, not reading. I have an app, and so if I can't read things, this past year when I couldn't read it, I would do the app that has the morning devotions on it. And so we call it the daily office. And so I would do that. Well, then I got depressed, and I was so depressed that I didn't even do that. So I made a commitment to myself that that is important to me and my relationship with the God of my understanding, and that my sadness or depression or feeling unwell does not need to interfere with my ongoing relationship. So I've started that back up, and that's bringing me peace and connection to the God of my understanding, and I'm very happy about reclaiming that. So I've reclaimed some things in the past. I've changed some things. Instead of yoga, I'm doing Tai Chi. I'm still walking as much as I can. So I'm really feeling hopeful for my body. I'm not so hopeful yet for the country, but I also know that I'm doing everything I can there too. I called my senators today. Telling them exactly what I want them to do, and I can't make them do it, but I'm going to continue to reach out to my representatives and say, hey, this is your job. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And it's not supposed to be partisan. It's supposed to be for the country. And I hope all politicians are getting that message that the country is saying, get it together and do something. And I'm really hoping that they do an emergency session today and stop this insanity, really. So find for yourself, what is it that you're lacking? And what can you do to fill it? Are you lacking connection and you want to join a parish? Are you lacking joy and you need to go to a comedy center, or you need to get a bunch of your pals together and just do a wacky evening at somebody's house, or whatever it is? Stay connected, stay present, in how your body is responding to the chaos. How is your body and soul responding to the heaviness? And then what is it that will light you up? What is it that you do for yourself that always brings you joy, but you've forgotten to do it, or you've been too sad to do it? Find it. Do it. Because you are loved by the God of your understanding. And God is still speaking. God is still present in you and in me. And we can lift the heaviness by focusing on something else that makes us feel alive. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today on this podcast episode, and I appreciate you so very, very much. Just to let you know that we are going to have a guest, yay, pretty soon. Someone reached out to me this past weekend, and I've been in touch with them, and hopefully they'll get scheduled soon, and we will be able to hear and honor their story, and they have a book that I think you're going to be interested in. So stay tuned. The Midge's Mumblings portion of the Game with God podcast will be put on hold for an episode, and we've got a guest. And I implore you to please, I want to honor your story as well. And we would love to have you as a guest on the Gay with God podcast. So if you want to tell your coming out faith journey story, and you may even have something you would like to promote for the betterment of all those of us who hear you, please go to empoweredmidge.podbean.com. That's where you'll get everything you need to get to connect with me, to buy the memoir, Gay with God, Reclaiming My Faith, Honoring My Story. And you will find also links to having a complimentary session with me if you would like to request a taping to be on the podcast and have your own episode. All of those things can be found at empoweredmidge.podbean.com. If you want to peruse my website, you can go to gaywithgod.com, and you will find things there as well. Also, check out our Facebook group, Gay with God, where we do a monthly Zoom group entitled My Faith Journey. It's a great time to be in connection with other people. We've been working on Richard Rohr's book, The Tears of Things, and so we encourage you to come, even if you haven't read the chapter or you don't know what chapter we're on. The conversation opens itself up. Whether or not you've read the chapter or not, you'll be able to participate. So come join us at Gay with God. Answer all the questions on that Facebook group, Gay with God, so that I can invite you in. If you are listening to this podcast and are questioning whether you can be gay and be in a relationship with the God of your understanding, if you identify as LGBTQIA+, or not even sure if you're gay, God has always been within you. Even when you didn't know it, you have always been gay with God. Thank you, everybody. Stay tuned to see how you can join the Gay with God community. And as always, you are loved. I want to invite you to become a part of the Gay with God community. How can you do that? Stay connected by messaging me your thoughts and comments in the comment section under the downloads of the show on the Gay with God show page. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, and share so we can increase our community outreach and be a light to those who are struggling to claim their faith. Consider being a sponsor so I can highlight your service in our community. We are all worthy of respect and a relationship with the God of our understanding. I want to thank you in advance for supporting this podcast. Together, we as a community will keep this show visible and our community stronger. Deep gratitude to my friend Tim McClendon of Tim McClendon Music for allowing me to use an excerpt from Interlude 4, a song found on his CD entitled Sundance.